The UFC 197 pay-per-view. I need to take off my glasses because I always get the glare of the screen. UFC 197. That pay-per-view was pretty alright. The St. Preux and the Jones fight was a little bit disappointing. But that's ring rust. Jones can say that he felt more comfortable in the octagon than he ever has, and he can keep saying that all he wants, but he wasn't comfortable. He didn't look very comfortable. He was getting hit with more shots, more big shots than I thought he would have by Ovens. In all honesty, I really thought Jones would have knocked him out in the first few rounds, but it went all 5 rounds. Ovens, it was pretty surprising because Ovens looked good. He looked like he had something there. I mean, a lot of, especially on the FS1 post-fight recap show with John Anik, and I believe it was Rashad Evans and Tyron Woodley. Both Rashad and Tyron were saying that, hey man, he needs to go to a bigger training camp, he needs to find a better team. And he really does. I mean, obviously he should stay with the same team that he's with, but they could have a world champion fighter in Ovens. But he really needs some work. He needs some work on the feet a little bit, I'd say. Because, obviously he was running away from Jones, but he shouldn't have to. Obviously that's saying quite a bit because, obviously you can critique somebody and say they can do certain things differently, but that doesn't mean that it's always going to work, but you still need to try it. Ovens could be a world-class fighter. He's got the agility, he's got the athleticism, he's got the power in his hands to do so, to become a world-class fighter. He needs to go to a bigger team and try to see if he can build on that. Because, honestly, I saw a lot of things that I was really impressed with. The fact that his ground game was better than I thought it would have been. Obviously, Jones really didn't attack him very much on the ground. Not with, hands, but jiu-jitsu-wise, he didn't really attack him and didn't really get anything on Ovens that was, oh my god, I can't believe he got out of that. He's really good at jiu-jitsu on Ovens' part kind of thing. But, he was threatened on the ground. It just, like Jones kept saying, I just didn't pull the trigger. I think he was scared too. I think this was the first fight, obviously first fight back, and it's a really scary opponent. I mean, I think he would have done the same thing in the Cormier fight. I mean, obviously he's got a little bit more, stability because he fought Cormier before, but I think he would have been in big trouble if that fight were against Cormier, because I don't think Cormier would have walked around the octagon that much, and Jones was getting hit. Jones needs to work on his footwork. I don't think he was expecting Ovens to be as good as he was, and I also don't think that he was expecting to have to pull the trigger. I think he was expecting to come in and be absolutely the same as he was 15 months ago, and that's just not the reality. He was off for a year and 5 months, or a year and 3 months. And, I think he expected to walk in there and be like, hey man, I'm home, and I'm going to do really well, and that's just not the reality. That's not what happened. Honestly, Jones looked a little bit worse than I've ever seen any of his fights, because I've watched every single one of them, and obviously it was a big layoff, but damn, he did not look good. It kind of looked iffy. It kind of looked like, obviously his cardio is a lot better. His cardio has gotten fabulous, but he didn't look confident at all, to me at least. But at one point, he started unloading and started figuring out Ovens' angles and everything, and he was starting to, get pretty well off around, the 4th round and 5th round, but apparently that was because Ovens broke his arm. So I don't know. I think if Ovens would have kept pushing forward like he did with 30 seconds left in the 5th round, I think he probably, if he did that the whole fight, he would have won that fight. 100%. Because Ovens looked much better than Jones, in my opinion. And I didn't expect it to be like that. I expected Jones to come in and be fabulous. And that's the hype. That's the hype talking. The hype was explosive around Jones. It wasn't as big as Conor McGregor hype, but it was close. People were talking about how, the weightlifting and all that shit was gonna, they made it seem like he was going to have explosive knockout power and be great on his feet, and that was just not what happened. I mean, Ovens ate some big shots, but Ovens really wasn't even the worst for wear except for his arms. I mean, that was it, because he kept getting kicked. I mean, he got hit with more kicks than he did punches in that fight, and obviously that's going to, fuck you up, because Jones has big legs, and they're long as fuck. So, it was just it was a weird little, it was a weird fight. That was probably one of the most boring fights I think I've watched in a long time. There was really nothing going on in that fight that was extremely interesting, and there wasn't really anything going on either side that was like, wow, except for Ovens being a little bit better than I thought he was going to be. And now we obviously move on to Demetrius Johnson and Henry Cejudo. Cejudo, obviously, I knew that it was going to happen. I knew that he was going to get wasted by Johnson, rather. And he did. Johnson was very good. That was probably the best Johnson's been in quite a while. Obviously, the knockout that he had on Joseph Benavidez was spectacular. But this time around, I mean, Johnson looked incredible. His takedown defense, obviously, Cejudo got him on the ground with a... That was probably one of the weirder ways to get somebody down onto the ground. Like, takedown-wise, that was a weird takedown. And it looked nice, but it had nothing behind it. There was really no power or anything like that. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm going to take you to the ground and figure you out. And Cejudo mentioned that in the post-fight press conference. But, Cejudo, he needs more time. I think Cejudo would be able to give Johnson a run for his money if he has, like, a year more of experience. Because Cejudo had to beat somewhat decent guys in the 125-pound division to get up to, the title fight, which obviously was rushed. Everybody knew it was rushed. Everybody knew that he wasn't going to be that great. It was pretty rushed. But Cejudo did a good job for how rushed he was. But Cejudo needs way more time. He needs way more work on his hands. He needs to work on his footwork, for sure. His footwork was a little bit lazy, and we didn't even get to see much of it, but from what we saw, if you look at how he was not able to move away from Johnson, obviously they were in the clinch, and that's how, he got a TKO. But to me, that was a knockout because, Cejudo was stumbled and he went to the ground. I don't know. I don't like TKO. That's just me, though. Just call it a fucking knockout. If you stop the fight because somebody's stumbling, that's a knockout to me. Obviously, he didn't knock him out, but they might as well just take out the middleman with that TKO bullshit. Anyway, people are going to shoot me for that. I can already tell. Whatever. Johnson looked very good. He was very stable. I expected him to kind of get dominated on the ground, and I'm not exactly sure why I thought he was. But he wasn't. He wasn't dominated on the ground. There was nothing Johnson was just... DJ was just doing his thing, like he always does. He's getting a lot better, and I'm going to make another video, so I won't mention this in this one. But there's a matchup that Johnson needs to have, and it's probably one of the best matchups that the UFC can do right now. For legitimate fans, it'll be a great matchup once again. But I'll do a separate video on that with a couple of more fights that I think would be very good. But obviously, I got to talk about Yair Rodriguez. Or is that his name? I need to make sure, because I kept saying it wrong in my other video about the card. It was pretty upsetting. Hold up. So I'm gonna go to it really quick. Sorry. I just need to make sure. Motherfucker, why are they doing that shit? Motherfuck. What the hell? Okay, yeah, Yair Rodriguez. Sorry. So, obviously, Yair Rodriguez, his head kick was fucking bananas. But, you know, it was definitely a great knockout, but, I mean, I didn't get to see much, but Andre Fili, he needs to work on some of his shit. But honestly, to me, you know, Robert Whittaker, if he were to keep moving up in the 185-pound division, I think he's going to be... people need to watch out, because Robert Whittaker is just a spectacular fighter. I mean, he's probably my favorite fighter right now. The way that he moves, the way that he punches, the way that he pushes the pace. Every single fight that I've watched, he is so aggressive that he baits you into wars, and he can win those wars every single time. And people just need to start running away from him. And the way to beat him is to hope you have enough power in your right or left and just take him from the outside every single time. You got to hope that you get him, because you're not gonna knock him out any other way, unless you got him in a clinch and just fucked him up. But I don't even think then you would knock him out. Robert Whittaker is one of the best up and comers in the 185-pound division right now, for sure. But the rest of the card was, it was all right. But obviously, the Yair Rodriguez knockout was very good, and so was the Johnson TKO. It was pretty good. There was a lot of shit that happened in those fights that were pretty impressive. But the stinker fight was definitely the Jones and Vince fight. It was a little bit depressing. That wasn't a good fight at all. I was not impressed with Jones at all. And he better hope that he figures something out whenever he fights Cormier, because if he fights Cormier like that, he probably will get beaten. And, obviously, his excuses were that Vince was standing in orthodox instead of southpaw, which it really does matter. And I saw ring rust. I didn't see anything else other than ring rust. But if I had to guess, he did all right. He did just enough to win that belt, the interim title. But I just I don't know. That was a little depressing. That was honestly one of the most boring fights I've seen in a long time. The last 30 seconds of the final round was great, but I will say this: if Ovens goes to a bigger team, and he were ever to get like a rematch against Jones, I think, and I personally believe this, he could beat Jones. He could, but he needs some work. He needs more confidence. He needs to watch more tape. And to take a fight on 3 weeks' notice after a guy had an entire camp, but only had to change the game plan of his camp with 3 weeks' notice, Ovens did very well against somebody who is probably the best fighter in the 205 division ever. He did a fantastic job, and I think he could beat him if he goes to a bigger team and he works on that footwork. That footwork needs work so bad, and he needs to work on that cardio. I mean, he needs work, but he could become a champion in the 205 division, which this was a big, even though he didn't win, this was a big win for him personally, and he needs work, but he'll get there. So thanks for showing up to this video. See you later, Diag.